this time we invite Lori up here to speak a little bit different story, a story of her survival through the disease. So, thanks, Samantha. That was a beautiful story, and I'm going to speak from the other side, from a patient's perspective. In some ways, I do think it's probably easier on the patient than it is on the people who watch them suffer. But just to introduce myself, I work on staff at St. Kate's with Focus, and so I'm not actually a student here. But I'm a leukemia survivor. When I was 15, I was in track and cross country and softball. I loved to work out, and I was very active and straight-A student, and just my body began going downhill. I started getting a lot of pain, and I got to the point where I couldn't even climb a flight of steps. And so I went to the doctor several times, and they kept telling me, oh, you probably have mono, or you probably have scoliosis, or some other diagnosis. But eventually I was brought to the emergency room one night where after doing several tests, they realized that I had leukemia. And the first thing the doctor said is that, I see that you are a fighter, and you probably will not die from this. So I asked the next question, will I lose my hair? And mind you, I had very long blonde hair, and that's what I was known for. And when the doctor told me yes, that's when I lost it. Especially at 15, those are the things that you think about most of all. So from there, my whole life turned around. I started on a course of 2.5 years of chemotherapy and radiation. And I was an experimental patient, which means that they blasted me with all sorts of drugs. So thankfully with that, within 7 days, I went into remission. It never came back, but just like with antibiotics, when you start something you can't finish, you have to keep on going. And so I continued on the 2.5 years of chemotherapy and radiation. And so my hair slowly fell out, and people in class would pick it off my back, and it was just the most humiliating thing to go through in high school. And I'm really glad, if any of you women have given your hair to Locks of Love, thank you so much, because they didn't used to have nice wigs. So I went in to get fitted for a wig because this woman convinced me that it was going to look exactly like my hair. And my mom and I put it on, and I still have it actually. It's hilarious. I just kind of put it on for Halloween every now and then. But it is this huge bond sort of thing. So thank you for all you women who have donated your hair to Locks of Love to make natural looking wigs. But I was also devastated because I knew with sports I had to sit out for a season. But I figured, okay, this is one lap around the track, and I can do this and fight this. But a year into my chemotherapy and radiation, I started feeling pain in my joints. And so I went in to get tested and found out that from the steroids that I had to take for leukemia, I developed a condition called avascular necrosis, which basically meant that all my joints were disintegrated from the steroids. So for the rest of my life, that I was going to be in pain in all my joints, and that eventually I'd have to have my hips replaced and do whatever surgeries. And so 10 days after I graduated from high school, I got my left hip replaced, and a year after that, I got my right hip replaced. And the next year, I got my elbow. I had surgery on my elbow, and I still remember the day when my physical therapist looked at me and she said, I want you to know and prepare yourself. You will never run again, and you will never play sports. And that was devastating to me. But in all of this, on one hand, I realized that a part of me died with all this. I'll never know that person again who was carefree and didn't think about things like death or about not having disabilities. But on the other hand, I went through so much healing. I began counseling at a camp called Heart Connection. And I know there's a sorority here who does some charity work for Heart Connection. It's a children's cancer camp. And in counseling this camp, you would look around and you would see kids who were missing limbs or lost parts of their face or sick. And you would see that they would just be playing basketball like all the rest of the kids and carrying on. And so on one hand, you would be thinking like, woe is me, for having this, but you'd look around and you'd see that it could be a lot worse. And so what I began to do is to actually count the blessings that I have in my life and to thank God for the years that I actually could run. I never thought about that until we lose something that we love. We never really appreciate the gift that it is. And so I began to realize like the gifts that I do have in my life, that I'm not entitled to even be able to walk or to roll over in bed tomorrow, or to have 3 hot meals a day. And so for all those blessings, I just began to thank God for those. And that's the way that my faith has been strengthened through this. As we're all gathered here, if I could just give just one message, one thing for us to keep in mind. We're all ultimately here for life. We're here to raise money to fight cancer, but what we're ultimately here for is to celebrate the gift of life that we have, and to remember the lives of those who have been lost through cancer. And so in these times, it's that we stop and we actually think about the fact, and it touches on our mortality. We begin to realize that we ourselves at some point will die. And that hits us because it makes us wonder, how are we living our life? And what are we living our life for? And so, in a sense, that's such a blessing. If you've heard that Tim McGraw song, to live like I was dying, I hope you get the chance to live like you were dying. There's such an awesome message in that song because it touches on something in us. Also, what movie is this from? Every man every man dies, but not every man truly lives. Does anyone? Braveheart. Yeah. So in that touches on something in us, that we are here to celebrate life. And so in celebrating life, what Tim McGraw tries to get at that song is that he is free to focus on what really matters in his life, the relationships and forgiving others. So I encourage all of you, as you've heard my story and the countless others that you'll hear tonight, in the lives that have been touched by this disease, that you think of your life and you consider what it is that you're living for. What is your life aimed at, especially here, and just realize the gift of your own life. Thank you, and God bless.